Hello indie game fans, grimdark as a thematic or aesthetic choice has been growing in popularity, which I suspect is primarily due to the Soulsborne games as well as increasing graphical power, so if you want to take a walk on the sick, twisted, gory and wild side of things, these are my recommendations. Now I bet you weren't expecting the video to open with a boss wielding her stillborn child by the umbilical cord to be used as a flail, since that visual alone is kind of what I'm talking about, which is pretty evident here with Morbid the 7 Acolytes. This is an underrated top-down Souls-like title that released in December 2020, which is never a great idea, often getting buried by all of the Game of the Year and Game Awards stuff, so this may be something that you missed. You are venturing into a cursed land to take on the 7 Acolytes, horrific, grotesque bosses which are the key to lifting the curse from the land. The action is great, the visuals gory, and the overall atmosphere very well done, being the poster child for the games that I'm gonna cover.
People fear what they don't understand, and in death, you will learn.
One of my personal favourites in the space is Death's Gambit Afterlife, a title from 2018 that did get a major free content patch not too long ago, and while a flawed game in many ways, does have bits that are to be appreciated. You play as a warrior who fell in battle, being offered a second chance by currying the favour of death itself, having to find and destroy the source of immortality in this cursed land. In typical Souls-like fashion, it does have a story that you need to dig deeper to find, where the Dark Souls influence is clear, even having their own dragon on the bridge moment. However, the world and atmosphere is top-notch, exemplifying this very grimdark theme that I'm talking about being one to check out.
You continue to feed into this cycle of death.
You remember our deal, don't you?
I hesitate to put 3D Souls-like RPGs on this list since they are very clearly going for the Dark Souls vibe, which, granted, comes with the territory, but Mortal Shell does have one interesting central mechanic in being able to harden your shell, which changes the flow of combat, being of interest for sure. Now, not all games on this list are Souls-like titles, but Vigil the Longest Night does happen to be one, a 2D Souls-like platformer which is more than meets the eye. You play as a member of the Vigilant Order, sent to battle against the forces of eternal darkness, where the enemy and especially boss designs in this are something to behold. Huge skeletal monsters, a lump of flesh hanging from the ceiling, nasty creatures with all sorts of teeth and claws, as well as the expected fleshy abominations are just a sampling of the bosses that you will encounter. I like how this controls, and despite this having a little bit of a rough translation, is certainly worth a play, where there is a twist that I shall not spoil that makes this worth checking out. As compared to the other games on this list, GRIME is perhaps not as bloody or disgusting since enemies are made of rock and roots, but there's just something very unnerving and disturbing about this game. You play as a living black hole where your only objective is to consume and crush your enemies, of which there are plenty and it does have interesting combat. Firstly, weapons are alive and can transform like in Bloodborne, so how does wielding a centipede whip sound? Where a critical element to master in this game is the parry, where if you do it right, you can then absorb an enemy, which, done enough times, will grant you some special ability from that. So, I guess? It was a little buggy at launch, especially with the respawn system after you fall into a pit, but I do think that it is largely under control, so check this out if you have not.
No one knows what made them attack. But one thing's true. Frog spawn show no mercy. Taunting. Killing. Feasting on rat flesh. Until only their foul bog stench remains.
When the trailer of this game opens with the father of our protagonist getting ruthlessly impaled by a javelin, you know that is about to go down, where Tales of Iron does remind me of the Twitter account Nature is Metal, which does contain many videos of animal violence which is not for the faint of heart. Even the opening seconds of this trailer shows the invading frog clan literally killing and eating the rats, but it is not as graphic due to the art style. While it has interconnected sections and shortcuts, this resembles more of a 2D Souls-like rather than a Metroidvania, since it is relatively linear, but the combat and art are not to be missed. And as an Easter egg, you might recognize the narrator in this game as one Geralt of Rivia.
Heavy is the head that wears the crown.
I had a very tough time deciding between the top 4, but the newest entry on this list is the not-so-indie and the LILIES Quietus of the Night, coming to us from some pretty large Japanese developers, but is unique and awesome, being what I would describe as hauntingly beautiful, almost like a twisted fairy tale. A corrupting rain known as the Rain of Death has fallen upon the world, where upon coming into contact with it, has warped both men and beasts alike, and you play as a priestess with the ability to purify these souls. The most interesting part of this is that our heroine is unable to directly attack, instead relying on the Fallen Knight, which conveniently double up as the Metroidvania exploration abilities. But the indirect control does make combat feel very different. Once you get a handle on that, this game is an absolute joy with a very grimdark world worth exploring. Salt and Sanctuary is very good, and yes, do note that I said Sanctuary and not Sacrifice, in that while this game has a sequel that released this year, it is the case where the original is more apt for this video. You play as the escort for a princess who's being sent to a faraway land in an arranged marriage to broker peace, but alas, the ship is attacked and you find yourself washed up on the shores of a mysterious island, filled with undying enemies and horrendous bosses. Bits of the lore are uncovered through in-game tombs, but the deliberate Souls-like combat translates very well into 2D in this game. I was very impressed with the number of character classes, builds, and even things like factions that you can join and gods that you can pray to, all having effects on the story and progression that are not clear at first glance, again being much like a Souls-like title. I wouldn't say that the art is pretty, but it is stylized such that this 2016 game still looks pretty good, so do pick this up if you have not.
There is a great horror beneath the manor.
One of my personal favourite indie games of all time is Darkest Dungeon, a roguelite RPG that is so brutal and so good, where you recruit mercenaries and seek to reclaim parts of the estate where your ancestor has awakened an ancient, unspeakable evil. I absolutely love the art style, and add to that the mental ailments for your characters, permanent death if you lose them in battle, and the hopelessness of it all makes it one of the best in the space. And of course, the poster child for grimdark indie games is Blasphemous, one that has captured my imagination ever since it was revealed, being one of the most brutal and gory games out there, which is even more impressive considering that it is using pixel art. Whether you are beheading enemies, disemboweling them, or having your own character being literally ripped limb from limb by a gigantic blind baby, there are all kinds of f***ed up shit in this game, which honestly still amazes me to this day that they could get away with something like this. However, it is not simply blood and gore, but does have great combat, interesting upgrades, and most importantly, a tremendously satisfying sense of exploration, where the developers have gone above and beyond, releasing 3 major content patches all for free, gaining a lot of goodwill from me in the process. There is a sequel in the works which I'm very excited for, but we have yet to see anything from that game. But if you want to know why I'm so hyped, play this game, taking the #1 spot. For more Souls-like titles, watch these videos and I will see you after the jump.